and take you on some embracing ski adventures in the Scottish Highlands. So, welcome. I'm Si Lamb. I'm a reserve soldier working in the Royal Artillery. I'm currently full-time reserve soldier working at Army Headquarters in Andover. So my skiing journey started in 1989, where I learnt to ski up in Scotland, a little place called the Lecht. I think it's still running when there's snow there. And my current role within the Army is I'm an Army ski tour leader, where I lead groups of soldiers worldwide on non-glacial terrain. I've also completed the advanced Avalanche course. It's 5 days, and this is designed to generate an in-depth understanding of moving with groups in the mountains during the winter and how to read the conditions safely to make informed decisions. I'm also a winter mountain leader, and this is required if you wish to ski tour in Scotland with troops, not required if you're in the Alps. And I think that says something about the weather conditions for Scotland. I generally deliver Army ski touring trips for the Army Adventurous Training Group, where we run 6-day alpine ski development courses. And I see on the attendee list, we have quite a few ski leaders with us this evening. So this will all be a reminiscent of what they deliver as well. So far, I've delivered 3 beginner courses, teaching soldiers who've never seen a set of skis before to complete parallel turns. I've delivered 9 intermediate intro ski touring courses, where we take soldiers who have completed the basic course and introduce them to companion rescue, touring techniques, skins and crampons, and developing leadership skills in the hills. And so far, I've logged 10 ski touring courses with overnight hut stays in slightly more challenging terrain. I'm also a member of the Eagle Ski Club now for about 3 years, and I've attended the Slightly Steepy Week out in Aurora in Switzerland with Graham Frost, a really good week where you can develop your jump turns and again get into some quite spicy terrain with Graham Frost, who's very knowledgeable in the area. And also I've attended the camper van meet up in Braemar, where we had a wonderful weekend searching out some Scottish snow amongst the heather. And the background picture, for those who recognise it, is the escalator, a little bike and hike up from Aviemore, and it pushes you up onto the plateau near Blair. And that's quite, I think, a standard typical Scottish scene where you have to hunt the snow out. So why is the Army teaching skiing? It's a really good question, and I'd like to introduce to you a slightly well-known skier, Graham Bell, who can probably tell you more about it than I can.
The British Armed Forces have bases all over the world and soldiers who regularly risk their lives for their country. The environments that they work in don't usually require the ability to ski, but interestingly, the Army are using this as part of the development training for their servicemen and women. I've been invited to a base in Bavaria to see how it works. Unless I step out of line, thankfully there won't be any combat involved. The Armed Forces Adventurous Training Programme covers a range of activities such as rock climbing and mountaineering, as well as adaptive skiing for wounded or injured soldiers. I'm taking part in an advanced ski leader course which covers ski touring and backcountry skiing.
From here we're going to actually cut right and we're going to traverse up. So we get up onto this little...
Adventurous training is just another form of military individual training, but we use this austere, extreme environment to put an extra bit of challenge in.
There's an aspiration that a third of a regiment will go away each year and do 5 days adventurous training. So it is part of what we call the offer, which hopefully makes the Army attractive to people wanting to join, but importantly it's a training measure that makes them better. It's about taking them out of their comfort zone, putting them in a position of challenge and exposing them to risk in a controlled fashion.
More than likely we'll do an avalanche scenario at some point as well.
It's just enhanced self-awareness. If they have enhanced self-awareness, they make better decisions, they lead better, and they have a greater all-round ability to operate in the conditions we need them to.
After a detailed briefing, it's time to head to the mountain. The plan is to tour to the peak and ski down through the backcountry. The reality is that these soldiers may need to lead their teams in high-pressure situations. They may never do their day job in the snow, but here they're out of their comfort zone, learning invaluable transferable skills. The emphasis is on them to lead the group in a risky, difficult environment.
What are the key things they're having to learn?
So as well as the technical aspects of skiing and be able to teach them skiing is leading, so safe travel in the mountains, as well as all the off-piste ski kit, so transceiver, shovel probes and companion rescue. And as well as that is a kind of big aim on some developmental skills.
What are you teaching in the decision-making process in areas of danger?
Avoiding steep slopes, looking at the snowpack as well, so they're getting a feel for what's under their feet, and then everything else that comes with safe travel. So if they're leading a group of 6 people, to space out in relevant times when we've got steep aspects and ultimately make the right decision. Grab your maps, work out where we are.
To go. Yeah. So we had a little bit of a change of route there, didn't we, because of the radiation on the south-facing side?
Yes, so at the time Matt was leading and just changed from skinning around on the southerly aspect to the nice shaded aspects, so the snow's much colder, so much safer travel for us as a team of ski tours.
Out here there's time to consider their decisions, but whilst on operation these soldiers could face dangerous or life-threatening situations. How they react in a crisis is vital, so this training involves an avalanche rescue exercise.
Let's go, let's go, let's go. That's it, good, nice one.
First aid kit.
Get him out, quick! Any comments that you would make about this particular scenario?
Yeah, so started digging maybe slightly too close to where the casualty was. You can be quite often digging on top of somebody. It's much more effective to be digging slightly downhill, and that's why we practice these scenarios. The more times we practice it, the slicker and the quicker that we become as a team. The plan now is just to skin up this track here to the final bowl towards the top of the Gamsfuss.
Ski touring may be scenic, but it's absolutely exhausting. As we reach the top, it's another reminder of the physical condition required if you want to be an effective soldier.
Dropping!
So we ski steep slopes one at a time. Gotta have safe practice.
I've done my fair share of off-piste mountain safety courses, and it's interesting that the armed forces deem the skills needed to be transferable to what they need. It's all about putting people into potentially hazardous environments so that they can make the right decisions under pressure.
So there you can see the type of austere extreme environment the military operates in and why they choose ski touring to train their soldiers to make good decisions in hazardous terrain. So Scotland and Scottish weather, an extreme austere environment, and ski touring requires us to have the skills to predict and go out when the weather is the most optimal. And forecasting snowfall is very difficult. The air that's coming from warmer areas and spent a long time over warm seas, that's very difficult to generate snow. What we're looking for is heavy precipitation that comes off from more sort of northerly aspects. That's perhaps supercooled and carries a lot of frozen or supercooled water or snow within it, and hopefully it can reach the ground before it gets a chance to melt. The Met Office has produced some quite interesting graphs here looking at the mean temperature winter average. For Scotland, we can see the effects of climate change and that warming up of the air temperature. And that's going to make future skiing quite challenging in terms of the weather patterns changing. The research out there for weather is a little bit mixed in terms of the predictions. It's based upon how we think we can reduce our emissions and the effects that has on the climate. But research is sort of suggesting that we're going to see increasing rainfall intensity and variability within those precipitations, and an increase in temperatures. And if we're looking for precipitation to stay as snow as it falls, we need those sort of colder temperatures. So it'll be interesting to see what happens as these snow events do sort of change from season to season. But we can definitely see sort of a gradual decline in the quality of snow sort of north of the border. Bit of weather forecasting then. One of the top tips for weather forecasters is the 5 to 8 line. And it's the little red dashed line that we see on the sort of forecast from the Met Office. And this is an indication of air thickness. And if we have a 5 to 8 line, which is sort of south of the border or south of the UK, we're more likely to get snow and precipitation falling. On this example here, the 24th of Feb, the actual weather was, I think, Storm Gladys had hit with high winds and rain in the city of Glasgow, turning to heavy snowfall overnight. A lot of the weather models now have taken the guesswork out of weather forecasting. And if you look at things like the Snow Forecast Map or Weather Online on Net TV, they actually have models which look at the 5 to 8 and will give you some prediction of where snow is. And hopefully that'll make your decision process in terms of when to go a little more accurate. So the main aspect for ski touring in Scotland really is making a safe journey in the hills. And to undertake that sort of process, we need information about the snowpack. And we're very fortunate in Scotland that we have the Scottish Avalanche Information Service, an organisation that sends out forecasters throughout the winter period to dig snow pits and to evaluate the snowpack and trying to establish how consolidated the snowpack is, where there are any inconsistencies, where the snowpack hasn't meshed together with some consistency, and trying to evaluate with slopes how dangerous or how prone to triggering those snow layers could be. These guys and girls are out in all sorts of weather out in Scotland, and they're able to then give us a overview of the hazard conditions in Scotland. And it's a really good website to look at that history of the snowpack as well. So once the evaluators have been out onto the ground and have picked up that information, they're able to come up with a hazard level, and it comes out as sort of low, moderate, considerable, and high. And here we can see the main skiing areas of Scotland, and based on the sort of 135 days that the forecasters are out, we can see that there is a sort of a higher percentage of those low forecast days. And this is indicative when there's not much snow on the ground. That's when there's a low rating, or the snow has been there for quite some time and it's consolidated. But as ski tourists, we're really looking for that sort of fresh snow that's come down. We're more likely to be operating in a sort of moderate or considerable hazard rating in those conditions. Unfortunately, when we have fresh snow and it hasn't had a chance to consolidate, we are likely to encounter avalanches. And from the winter reports 21-22, there were 13 recorded avalanches with people involved. 8 of those were when we had a considerable hazard, and 5 were in moderate. So good snow, unfortunately, means we're going to have an increase in hazard level when we're out on the hills. Okay, so looking at the winter report again from Scottish Information Service, the avalanches that occurred, 10 were human triggered. 3 of those unfortunately got caught by natural avalanches from releases from above, probably from a cornice. If we break down into those figures, we can see that actually the number of people involved in avalanches on skis or snowboards are only 2 compared with the climbing and walking community. So whether that's due to increased awareness and education in the ski community or not, I'm not sure. But certainly avalanches are an issue when we're out there trying to find good snow to ski on. Now, this is a rather sobering slide in terms of the fatalities that have occurred up in Scotland over the last 10 years or so. We can see some definite spikes in those figures with nothing in 2021. I think if we look at the figures, you can generally see that there are, in the ski touring community, a requirement for transceiver, shovel and probes, and that self-rescue safety equipment, and the knowledge and education to accompany that. And that, I think, is really helping in reducing those fatalities in avalanche terrain. The Scottish Avalanche Information Service also provides a heat map of where avalanches occur. Now, focusing on here on the Cairngorm ski area, and the sort of information that we can get from the website shows us observations from observers that are out on the ground and the types of activity that have occurred. So here we see an example of Coronation Wall and a point release. And this was an avalanche that wasn't human triggered, it was naturally occurring. So it's kind of giving you an instant feedback of what's happening with the snowpack, how dynamic is it safe to go in those areas, and sort of establishing an overall picture of where we can go on the hills. So the forecasters then would produce an avalanche report, and these are for all the main areas in Scotland. This one's for Lochaber, and we can see a hazard rose, which gives us different hazard ratings for different heights, different aspects, and an element about weather influences and the sort of the snow stability and avalanche hazard. What I really like about the compass rose is that it's quite intuitive and informative of the information it gives. So it's talking here, for example, snow from 600 meters and the different aspects of where the hazards are. So here we can see sort of the southerly westerly aspects are generally low in hazard level, but those northerly aspects, slopes, have a higher hazard risk. The reason for that is snow is very dynamic. When snow is more homogeneous, it's sort of melted and refrozen, it's more of a solid block, it tends to be safer. Where we have a sort of slower consolidation of the snow, where the sun hasn't hit it, it tends to be a little bit more dangerous because of those layers haven't bonded together well. So here we can see those sort of northerly aspects, especially at the higher, colder regions, having a slightly higher risk rating. So just by looking at the compass rose, we can see straight away that perhaps on our ski tour, we should be concentrating more on the southerly aspects and avoiding some of those northerly aspects, at least until the hazard rating has reduced a little bit. And the rest of the report then gives us observed weather influences, what's been happening to the weather overnight, how stable is the snowpack, and the mountain conditions. So what are we looking at in terms of above 600 meters? What are the ridges doing? Where's the wind pushing the snow? So all this is really useful information for us to sort of come up with where we need to look at our ski tours. I think the best part about the website is the blog that they produce as well for all the areas. So as the forecasters go out and dig their pits, they're also taking photographs of the area. And this particular photograph is from the 1st of April this year, and it's for the sort of the Cairngorm area, and it shows here the northern end of the Lower Groom. And potentially looking at this from the warmth of your sofa at home, you might think, well, is it worth going out? Doesn't look like there's much snow there. But it's sometimes these can be a little bit deceptive if you are just purely focused on the photographs, and I'll come back to this picture later on. But the blogs are very useful. They do give you a sort of on the ground look, a little snapshot of what's happening, what the snow's doing. So this is really useful actually on the website from the Scottish Avalanche Information Service, and that they sort of lead you through a step-by-step process of how you can evaluate the environment in Scotland for getting a safe ski tour in. And it talks about the planning phase first of all, where we're looking at what can we do at home, sort of, you know, week, 2 weeks out before we're planning to go out. What snow's lying on the hills? How windy is it? Is it cold or warm? What's the weather doing? What's our team? what sort of skills and experience have our team got, and what's the landscape doing? Whereabouts are we going to go for our ski tour? Is it steep terrain we're looking at? Are there convex slopes? Are there concave slopes? And we're trying to get an idea of where perhaps with the weather and the team and the landscape, what would give us a sort of a safe journey. We then look at the journey elements of our tour. So once we've done our background planning, we should be looking at when we're on our ski tour, sort of continual observations. So has the visibility changed with the weather? Are we seeing avalanche activity on our snowpack? What's the team doing? Is the team sort of still fit and strong? And has our sort of route changed on our ski tour? Making sure that what we plan is what we're seeing on our journey. And then the third and final element are sort of key places. We're sort of looking at, well, what's changed? Is it an issue? Does it make sense to continue? Is the weather getting worse? We've seen the weather forecast. Is visibility going to decline? And should we be turning around a little bit sooner? Is the slope stability good at the moment? We've perhaps looked at a moderate forecast, but actually the temperature may have risen quicker than we expected, and that snow is getting more unstable. Does it make sense to continue? So this is a really good planning tool for those who are getting out into the hills and want to make their journey as safe as possible by understanding what factors there are that lead us to a safe position. And there's a bit more detail on the website. When you sort of hit the button, it sort of takes you through and gives you some advice. That's a really good little tool to look at from the pre-planning perspective. Also on the Eagle Ski Club, I think we've got some links to this. This is the Henry's Avalanche talk. Henry sort of based himself out in the Alps. He's a very knowledgeable guy. He's sort of geography background. I think he's speaking at the Kendal Mountain Festival this month, and he's developed Henry's Avalanche talk, or his HAT guidance, and it's similar to the SAS Be Aware guidance, that it looks at the sort of puts more into sort of framework assessment. So looking at slope angles, danger levels, and activity, and gives you sort of a point-based system to looking at how you should sort of mitigate some of those risk measures that you've identified. And it makes it a little more sort of a checklist style accident reduction framework. And that's a really good little video on YouTube to watch to understand how all these aspects interplay with one another, together with the Avalanche Information Service sort of weather and snowpack information to inform your journey to make it as safe as possible. Interestingly, the military also carry out a similar sort of process with our sort of pre-trip ski tour planning. And here we go through the same sort of process. We understand what is the avalanche forecast doing, where's the risk level, what aspects are at risk, and what are the main snow problems. And sort of the main problems we're looking at on ski touring are those slab avalanches. They tend to be sort of the trickiest and most dangerous of all the avalanche types. But we're understanding from the avalanche reports what's out there, what height, what aspects. We then look at the snowpack information, and we're really looking for those instabilities and sensitivities to triggers. So how weak or strong is the snow, and what's it doing? What's the weather? Wind, precipitation, temperatures, are they rising, are they falling? Visibility good? Again, with the military ski tour leaders, we can operate in poor weather conditions. So we really have to understand what's the weather doing, and what tour can we implement that's going to be safe. And with that information understood, we can then develop a travel plan with turnaround times and primary concerns that help inform our decision making for the ski tour itself. And we'll put some bailout options in there. And then this form stays with our sort of exercise leader, and we have a sort of late back incident plan at the bottom, just to say, we're planning to go out for 2 days. We've got a refuge overnight. We've got Garmin InReach satellite comms. If we're planning to be back by 4 p.m. the next day, if you don't hear from us by 5 p.m., then potentially there's a problem, and please alert mountain rescue. And definitely by sort of 6 o'clock, if we're not heard, then press the go button for a rescue with contact details on. So this really sort of formulates our decision-making process and forces you to really dig into that background data to say, well, whether snowpack objectives and people, how does that play out with your objective? Do we need to change it? And how do we monitor it and adjust if things don't quite work out? So it's good to see the military, Henry's accident reduction framework and the BAE Avalanche Aware system all kind of following a similar pattern of understanding weather, routes and choices, and to keep things safe. And here's a sort of little sort of checklist to help you sort of plan your Scottish ski touring. Kathy mentioned the WhatsApp group. That's really useful. There's also sort of other areas of sort of Instagram for hashtag searches. Twitter gives you live feeds as webcams do as well. But I think the Scottish Avalanche Information Service is a really useful tool understanding what the snow's doing, what's happening with the weather, how the snowpack is changing. And that blog site really gives you an up-to-date feeling of what's happening out on the ground. And please be safe. Make sure you've got a sort of a backup plan or late back procedure. So that mountain rescue get an early heads up if you are late or planning a snow hole on the Cairngorm Plateau somewhere. So that's sort of the planning and the understanding phase for our Scottish ski tours. So really, well, where are we going to go is the next question. And this is a classic ski touring book from, I'm going to say 1987, I think it was first published. It's a well-thumbed book on my bookcase. There is a vicious rumour going around that the Scottish Mountaineering Club are going to re-release this with the new version. But it is a really useful ski touring book for both Nordic and anyone who's into alpine or Nordic skiing and alpine skiing. It gives you, I think, over 80 ski tours from the Pentland Hills up to sort of Glen Affric. The only criticism, I think, of the guidebook is the map layout. So it's a little bit schematic, but it has got you know, a reasonably good description of the route. There's no GPX files or satellite sort of data for them, but it is quite comprehensive and will cover a lot of the sort of moderate ski touring area for Scotland. And I recommend buying the book, if only for the wonderful tweed and skinny skis that are shown in all the pictures in the blue skies. But definitely one for your sort of bookshelf. Moving online, Steep Scotland is a really good resource for looking at ski tour areas. It has quite a good interactive map where you can look at the sort of main ski areas of Scotland. It tells you how many sort of areas are there. These aren't necessarily tours as such, but more about gullies or if you're from overseas, sort of couloirs and the faces and collie headwalls that you can ski. So it's a really useful sort of website. It gives you a little click on OS mapping to show you where the line is. So here, for example, we can see Castlegate's Gully, which is in the Cairngorms, just sort of south of the Cairngorm ski area. And it'll give you sort of a grid reference. And then when you click onto the site itself, it gives you a little bit of description, some photographs of what you should be looking for, and some general kind of information. Again, there's a link on the bottom of it to any YouTube videos, which again are quite useful. Again, what's missing from this is perhaps a GPX file you could download and put onto your Garmin watch or GPS unit to follow. But that's quite a good informative site for looking at your ski tours. I do know that Blair had some involvement with these publications, but these were a couple of cracking books from Kenny Bean. He's got two here for the Nevis Range, Ben Nevis and Glencoe. These are sort of a publication version of the Ski Mountain, where it gives you not necessarily tours, but again, sort of couloirs and gullies and more kind of steeper lines that you can ski within the sort of Glencoe and Nevis Range. It is an interesting read. It's almost like a climbing guidebook, or very similar to the rock facts guides that you see in the climbing community. And it's really good to see that kind of rock fact style layout in the Ski Mountain publications, because it really helps you get an understanding of the orientation and the steepness of the lines and how that interplays with the approach and the weather conditions to allow you to ski them. So again, another one for your Christmas list. Get those on your bookshelf. This is one of my favourite articles, actually. This is the UK climbing website, and they've got a great little touring info, sort of Alistair Buchanan's 10 best beginner ski tours. If you are getting into ski touring and want some sort of easier lines that aren't going to sort of push you into a 40-degree gully on Ben Nevis somewhere, then this website gives you a really good description of what the routes are doing, the approaches, some OS mapping, and that's quite an easy information resource to tap into if you're looking to start somewhere easy on your sort of ski touring journey. Okay, so this is another probably one of the best books out there. I have to say that because Blair's on the call this evening. But ski touring the Northern Cairngorms. This is an absolutely solid guidebook which includes ski touring and those essential sort of gullies and head walls that if you're into steep skiing are described in the book. So here we can see the example of the Goat Track Gully. Again, this is in the Cairngorm ski area, and it gives you the approaches into the area and then the particular faces and steep lines that you want to access. It is focused primarily in the Northern Cairngorms, and it's really comprehensive and full of fantastic photographs which really sort of help you understand where the routes are and what they look like. So again, it's a kind of that rock fact style presentation which is really easy to read and follow. So this is Blair, and from his British Backcountry website. Oh, congratulations, Blair, on your Snow Sports Person of the Year award from Snow Sports Scotland. That's very well deserved. I've been on a couple of courses with Blair and his British Backcountry course. He runs ski touring introductions and journey explorer days, and the sort of the classic bike and hike over sort of Blair Rick and the escalator. Really good if you're getting into ski touring and would like to utilize the information that a sort of local guide has for the area. Blair also runs skill development as well, where he'll give you top tips on navigation, avalanche avoidance, some rope work if you're into sort of climbing, and the steeps and gullies. And the course that I attended with Blair was the steeps and gullies skiing course. I was interested in developing my steep skiing technique, and also gain some sort of information on what I can do out in the Cairngorms and the best places to go. There's only so many times that you can ski, perhaps Lurch's Gully or do a lap of Cairngorm. And with Blair's knowledge and sort of leading the way, that really sort of gave me a bit more confidence in terms of understanding the guidebooks and seeking out those adventures for myself, having initially looked at them with Blair. So this was the day or the 2 days I did with Blair on the steep skiing gully course. So it was the 1st and 2nd of April. If you remember, I talked about the blog website from SAS for the 1st of April. So they were talking about not having much snow, especially in the Larag Gru area. But actually, when you push up high into the plateau, there's quite a lot of snow. So Blair's itinerary for day 1 of our steeps and gully skiing was to use some uplift in the Cairngorm ski area on the Pomatoes, and then cut across the Corricales Had Wall into Aladdin's Couloir, where we were able to practice some transitions from boot pack to ski, and ascend the couloir up into the shoulder, where we then dropped in one at a time and was skiing Aladdin's Couloir. This was quite interesting because the last time I was in Aladdin's Couloir was in the early 2000s with some friends, and it was very lean. And one of the girls in the group wasn't very happy about climbing that particular pitch in the middle of Avalanche Couloir, which was quite sort of sparse sometimes. So it was really interesting going back to this, but this time with skis and having a bit more snow. There was still some crying that day, but I'm pleased to say that we we finished the descent without too much of a problem. Blair then took us over to Half Gully, and again we practiced some transitions and skinning up the gully and descending down there, and then a final push up around and descending down to 2-tarn descent, which again, that sort of northerly aspect on that side held the snow really well and gave us a really good descent, and then a walk out back to the car park. So that was sort of day one. So Aladdin's Couloir, Half Gully, a 2-tarn descent, all in one day with temperatures raising from -2 to +2. So a quintessential Scottish day and a fantastic day out, really. The second day was kind of similar, and that we managed to get a bit of an uplift from the Cairngorm ski on the Pommer lift, and this time we headed over to Hell's Lum and then onto Castlegates Gully, and this is quite a steep gully that we were looking at skiing that day. Blair was able to go over and have a look at the gully and decide that due to the snowpack, there was quite a firm base, quite icy, but on the top of that was quite a loose, sloppy sort of slab. And the first 1 or 2 skiers would have a great descent, but the rest of us would be sort of scraping the hard stuff underneath, and especially on a steep line like Castlegates, we decided that we'd return another day for that and push on round to the Loch Ection descent instead, which gave us some really good snow. And coming back, we then decided that 2-tarn descent was so good the previous day that we'd give it another go on the second day. And again, quite a big day out, but some really interesting descent areas, and all these descents are in Blair's book. So if you're interested in repeating that, I suggest purchasing this. So really enjoyable 2 days. I learned a lot about technical steep skiing, which descents would be in condition based on the weather. Navigating in poor conditions was fairly straightforward, but it's interesting how you sort of group manage. And it was really nice to watch Blair work as a professional in these areas and pick up some top tips from him, which I can take back hopefully to the military side. So this I think sums up Scotland really in a slide. We see some quite sparse patches of skiing sometimes to push up onto the plateau, but I was lucky enough to be with Blair on a day where we skied down to Loch Arven on a bluebird day with powder, and that was quite special. But I'd just like to finish off with a final video clip from Blair's steep gully skiing day. So that was the British Backcountry Gullies and Steeps Day. There are some additional webinars that you can dip into on the Eagle Ski Club YouTube site. I know that Alan Sloan has done a fantastic webinar on ski mountaineering in Scotland, which goes into a bit more detail on some of the tools that are available, and I recommend looking at those. But that concludes my presentation. for this evening, and I'm very excited now to hopefully welcome Blair onto the call.
Hello, Blair. It's great to have you.
That was great. Thank you very much, Simon. That was very kind, all those things you said. And that was 2024, though. I think your slide said 2014, but it was...
Yeah, 2024. It was this year.
Yeah. We had a lot of days last year. I mean, last year was a terrible winter, but we did have a lot of days. I think I was on about 40 odd ski touring days. It was all for work. I hardly got out myself last winter. So, I mean, even in a poor season, we do manage in the Cairngorms to get quite a few days out. I think it was probably close to double that, all of our instructors altogether last winter. So there's still lots to do. And I think the thing with climate change is we do seem to be getting quite unpredictable conditions, in that we have these big storms that come through, and it's great for maybe 3 days or a week if you're lucky, and then it vanishes again. So I thought it was interesting, the statistics. They were talking about 2020, and I thought 2020 was a good season. It was 2019 we had an absolute shocker, but maybe statistically that was a bad snow year. It's just that we had these big storms that came in and then disappeared again. So I was going to do a Q&A. I'm not quite sure how we want to do that. Kathy, will we do just a free-for-all, or just people writing things, or do you want to sort of pull out some questions from the side there? I guess my area.
Blair, can I start with a question to you?
Sure, go for it.
Okay, so you've got quite a sort of varied background in skiing, having taught out in Val d'Isère and Teens, and now sort of predominantly back in the UK, up in Scotland. What drove you to, come up with the idea for this book? Because
yeah, I mean the book was basically because lots of our clients were asking for one. I just felt like I was sharing a lot of information in a lot of different ways, and it was a bit of a mess really. Whereas just putting it all in one place made sense. But I felt I shouldn't have been the person making that book. I was waiting for somebody else to do it, and there wasn't anything out there, so I put it together myself. But I'm quite dyslexic, and I find working on the computer difficult. So it was a hard thing for me to do, to put it all together. It was fun though, and I had all the material for that one. I had just from being out with clients in the Cairngorms, I had a huge amount of photographs, and the routes were in my head. So in that respect, it was quite free flowing. Did it relatively quickly, actually, for something like that. And then then I realized that what I really should do is do something that really justifies sort of the quality of the terrain that we've got in the Cairngorms and the whole of the Cairngorms National Park, because it is quite varied when you get out of the northern Cairngorms as well. A lot more access points. Northern Cairngorms we tend to access from the same sort of points, whereas you go into the southern and the eastern and the western, there's so many different access points, which makes it even more interesting. So then I reached out to a few other people who could help me with that content. My idea originally was I was going to go and get it all myself. I was going to go and ski all over Dromochter and all over around from Glen Shee and out to the Eastern Cairngorms, do all the stuff that I'd done in the past but hadn't documented, and some I hadn't done. And then, of course, we had another terrible season, and it just wasn't realistic. And I just felt like that book was successful. It would be just really good to do something, a bigger project for the whole national park, and that's what we're doing at the moment. So Scott Muir, who is here on the chat, on the webinar, he is the person who created Steep Scotland, and a lot of when I went and skied a route in a lot of the steep skiing, if I skied a route, I would look at his website first. So it felt kind of. Felt a bit wrong to then share that information in a guidebook when I was getting it from elsewhere. So for this bigger project of wanting to bring Scott in, my friend Jamie Johnson had already been working on a guidebook for the whole national park and had a huge amount of content, is far more organized and far better at design and those sort of things than me. I may be able to share some of the content if I can get that to work on the computer, but I'm not going to spend 10 minutes trying to mess around with that at the moment. We'll see what happens. But yeah, I mean, the next guidebook is quite different. Well, very different. It's become a completely different thing. It's a celebration of Scottish of skiing and snowboarding in the whole of the Cairngorm. So it includes resort guides, includes kind of side country options when they are there. Very few and far between those days, but and it also goes into folklore and history, the stories behind the names of these areas. So it's a massive book compared to the old one. And I can appreciate that 1,000 people bought the old book, and I'll contact you and I'll figure something out with the new one, because I originally thought there was going to be a big overlap, but this has become something quite different. But yeah, there is obviously some of the routes are similar, so there is duplication in that sense. But yeah, it's I'll try and show you what else is in there, and hopefully it'll make sense. Any other questions? I think my area of expertise is taking people out in the Cairngorms. I do work elsewhere in the country. When I started British Backcountry, I tried to use lots of different venues. I had a few good seasons. I had a van, and I was like all over the place. Running loads of courses in Ben Lawers, which is such an amazing place to go. And we had a few seasons where that became like you almost thought maybe this is something we could do. Maybe we could be running trips to Ben Lawers and out of Glen Shee and then up the west and everything. But of course, then reality hits, and you have a couple of seasons where you just spend every single weekend in the Cairngorms. And now we base ourselves in Aviemore for that reason, because it was getting very, very difficult for us to definitely guarantee we were going to have a Ben Lawers course. When the next day the rain comes and it strips it. So that's why we're purely focusing on Northern Cairngorms now, because that's the safer bet for running a business from. It looks like I've got a question. Oh no, sorry, you're just saying you can put a hand.
I think Kathy's been sort of fielding the chat bar for questions.
I've just invited people to raise a hand or type in a question if they're interested. So if I'm understanding, I'm from Europe, so I know less about.
Here we go. We got a question, Connor. Thank you, save me. Multi-day tours in Scotland, realistic or not? Yeah, definitely. And you could use bothies. It is actually really well set up for that. So I'm going to talk about the guidebook again. Can't help it. It's because basically all I've been looking at for the last month. So in the guidebook, we've got lots of the bothies are included in the guidebook. I mean, you have to be careful of that. We can't give like exact locations of bothies in a guidebook. It's not really the done thing. Although there are books about bothies now, aren't there? So maybe we can. But Jamie's involved he's actually in charge of a bothy. So he's very clued up on the bothies. And what we have been looking at is, these streamlines, these low-lying strips of snow that get you down toward bothies and how we can link them up. Finlay Wild has actually contributed a route to our guidebook. So Finlay Wild, the endurance athlete, and he has done the 18 Monroe, tent. Yes, of course, take a tent. Yeah. But sometimes it's nice to not have to carry a tent. Although I think even if you're going to bothy, you're going to have to carry a little tent, aren't you? Somebody said, Connor's saying, used a few bothies in my time, but a few people said to stay away or be careful due to weather conditions, weather changes. I'm not quite sure what I mean by that, Connor. But yeah, so I guess it's not always reliable. But yeah, you could carry a light tent, couldn't you? If you're looking at like the sort of normal Scottish conditions that you're going to be out in. Hopefully, you're going to have good snow at sort of mid-mountain to upper mountain, and then you go down into the valley and it's going to be green. So it's not going to be any different than going out in a sort of on a summer multi-day trip. So as I was saying, yeah, looking for these streamlines that will take you down low enough to get to your camping spot or your bothy. No reason why you can't camp high. Loch Aitken is a superb place for camping. And the snow, it probably will be snow there if you're ski touring up there and you've made a descent down to it. So that would just be like your normal winter camp where you're actually using the snow to make a windbreak around you, maybe even digging down to ground level if the snow is fairly.
Blair, I think what we might see as well is with the advent of the e-mountain bike, greater penetration into the hills. It makes it so much easier.
Yeah, e-mountain bike and a trailer, single wheel trailer, you can take so much kit with you. You could cycle into Loch Aitken and you could have, you could set up camp round about there. The ground's not great. There'd be somewhere, and then from there you could base yourself and you could do trips up either side. There's so many options like that. I'm going to just look across to other. Right, we've got a thing about skiwood. Skiwood, I'm using 85 mil skis for work. I use 78 sometimes if I'm out on my own just because they're super fast. But then I'm 65 kilos, and I know Finlay Mickle, who's the rep for Atomic, he makes fun of me for that, and he wouldn't go below a 95 even in Scotland. But he's on like a 106 in the Alps. So it really depends on your build, doesn't it? So for me, 65 kilos, my go-to ski in Scotland would actually be a 78. I'm more interested in traveling fast and, covering, my perfect day is kind of springs touring or even something firmer I can glide across quickly. I used to chase the steeps, I used to be really interested in the steeps. For me, steep skiing is merely a way of getting onto the good terrain lower down. I like to have those skills so I can get onto the, if I can access a quarry and in the Alps, maybe I can ski off a call to get onto something even, something I want to ski even more. So I'm not really seeking out steeps. So I'm tending to use skinnier skis that I can at the end of the day, the approach is quite long, so the lighter the kit is on your back, the better. And I've got a ridiculous boot, like a little skinny carbon skimo boot. Skis like rubbish, but again, I'm carrying it around a lot of the time, so for me, I've compromised that way. And I don't really care what people, when they see me ski, if they think I ski good or not. I'm kind of over that now. I just want to have a good fun myself, So I have asked for some stiffer boots because they were a bit floppy last winter. I'm trying to scan across to these questions. Hang on. Blair, I've seen a lot of news recent weeks of Scottish ski centres talking about potentially poor winter seasons coming to an end. Yeah, for sure. I mean, the Scottish resorts, can you imagine trying to run a ski resort in Scotland? It's got to be really difficult. Glencoe make it work, And the snow factory snow in Glen Shee has filled there's a little gully where the nursery area is, and they've managed to make quite good skiing there. But I think it's horrendously expensive to run those snow factories, especially if they're running it off diesel. And then Cairngorm, is supported, and I imagine will be supported for a long time to come. So it seems to keep going. And Nevis Range, are focusing on their summer activities and getting people up the lift to the cafe. I think if you look at the number of ski days Nevis Range had in the last couple of seasons, it's so few, or they were already winding down really. The announcements recently are just kind of confirming that. And the Lecht, I mean, the Lecht are struggling. I think there's a fundraiser for the Lecht. It'd be a real loss we lost the Lecht. They managed to operate in all sorts of conditions, and there's so many people have learned to ski there, and it's such a good place for families. So it'd be a real shame if the Lecht shut down. But I can see the pressures. The difficulty is with running a ski resort in Scotland is that on the really good days, everybody goes. The car parks are full, there's massive queues, but how are they supposed to staff that? Because they can't have people hanging around the rest of the year, so they're ready for that one day. So in the past, they've been very fortunate to have local people who can just, drop what they're doing and come up at the weekend and help run the lifts. But that's not really sustainable. So it's really difficult, really, really difficult. And they can, they're all trying to diversify, and everyone's trying really hard to make it work. But it's a tricky business for them. I'm going to glance across again. I'm a downhill skier, but would love to try ski touring in Scotland for the first time. How would I suggest I start? I mean, we run introductory courses. Our minimum requirement for an intro course is a red run skier. It's not so much the gradient though; it's more to the challenge is all the different sort of snow types you can come across in a day in Scotland. You're welcome to join an introductory course. You can look on our website and you can have a look at the prerequisites for that. I'd imagine if you're on this call, you're already skiing at a level where you could definitely do that. Of course, I don't know, have a look. And then you've got lots of other providers as well. There's if you're on Facebook, there's a group I started up a long time ago called British Backcountry, and I've pinned when I had a personal Facebook account, and I think it's still there. I pinned a post, it's the description to the British Backcountry course. The British Backcountry group, and it's got a list of all the providers that I know of or I knew of at that time who are operating courses in Scotland. So have a look at us and have a look at who else is out there. Obviously, Glenmore Lodge, if you want to have your accommodation and your transport and everything included as well, is another option. We meet people at our starting point, which is normally the Cairngorm Cass car park, and we do provide skis for introductory courses and for journey courses, and then for our higher end stuff, people tend to bring their own kit. Definitely.
Can I just cut in there quickly to remind people that the Eagle Ski Club provides subsidies for these kinds of training courses, particularly if you're under 30, particularly if you're starting out. Obviously, Blair's course, Glenmore Lodge's course. This is part of why we're promoting this. You don't need to think, oh God, how do I get to the Alps to do my intro to ski touring course? You can do it in Scotland, and Blair is one of various providers, and we will help you with the funding. That's one of the reasons to belong to the Eagle Ski Club.
Excellent. Yeah, plenty of options. We've got a lot of courses at weekends, and we tend to do single days and Saturday, Sunday courses. Just trying to be realistic with the way the weather is. We do run week-long courses later in the season. Somebody's talking about time of year, so sort of February, March is probably your safer bet. So we run our longer courses then, and the rest of the year we're running like single day courses, just because if you lose a 1 day course, you can shift it to another day, or you can offer a refund. It's not a complete disaster as a business, or for you guys who are booking on. It's been easier to be flexible, and that seems to work very well. Oh, good. There we go. That somebody's put it all up. I'm just going to scroll back up the chat here. So we have some questions about digging snow pits before skiing steep lines. Okay. Yes. So I have to be careful when you start talking about avalanche risk, and it was really good that Simon's showing you all that information there, because there is obviously every opportunity for that to happen in Scotland as well as elsewhere. And we saw there that statistically, it's there's less skiers than there are climbers and walkers getting caught. And I don't know why that is, but you hinted at that it might be to do with awareness. Definitely. And I think, but if you're looking at like the amount of time that people spend in the gullies and the steeper lines, a climber approaching a climb, is potentially in the firing line for a very, very long time. Skier perhaps not for as long. Possibly the fact that some skiers are coming in from the top of a line, that's a tricky one. The argument to climb a gully first to get information makes sense. However, if the top is unstable, it doesn't make sense. So sometimes being at the top makes more sense if you're looking at stability, because that's going to be the bit in Scotland that's going to be most likely going to be the bit that's dangerous. It's going to be a really loaded cornice, etc. So yeah, I have in the past entered on a rope, and I have actually checked the snow pit on the exact place where I'm going to be skiing. I think that's useful information. But to be honest, approaching these steep lines in Scotland, you get the information pretty quickly. It's 9 times out of 10, it's going to be a wind slab that's going to be the problem. It's going to be a cornice that's going to be the problem. And you can tell that. I think I can tell that fairly quickly. From just looking at it from above. So no, not very often digging snow pits. And to be honest, the thing that on steeper lines, the thing that worries me far more than avalanche risk, okay, cornice collapse, of course, but as I say, I feel like if I approach the top the right way, I can get the information I need before putting myself in that situation. But the thing that worries me far more is taking a slide. It's just going into something that's frozen solid and not being able to get a grip, and then getting taken down and dragged onto rocks below. And if you go back to what Simon was saying about these winters being more challenging, like for steep skiing, it's what it means is that the runouts are terrible. The space below the gullies are terrible. There's rock there instead of a nice snowy runout. So if something happens, the implications are really terrible. So when we're taking groups in, we're very careful about which locations we use. And the main thing I'm looking for is runouts. Of course, I'm looking at what's above me. I'm looking at cornices, I'm looking at snow stability. But the thing that usually stops me from using a gully is what's happening below, and whether or not it's frozen solid, or can I get a grip. So it's a little bit different than the sort of things you expect to see in the Alps. Yeah, I'm going to have a look across again. Have we got in a normal winter? Okay, in a normal winter, which is the best time to come to Scotland? Okay, so yeah, that's the one I've covered already. At what height does the snow begin? So, if you think about the car park in Cairngorm, what's that, 650 meters? So that, I would say, let's think, maybe half our groups that go out, and we're going out every single week, half our groups that go out are starting with their skis on at the car park. All right, they're 650 meters. The other half could be walking up to 800 meters. If I'm walking more than 800 meters, I'm probably not going to run the course, to be honest. It's just starting to be too much of a slog. Unless we're going in there to do something quite specific, I'm probably not going to be running courses. 800 meters is like must be mid station of the funicular, must be around about 800. Yeah, I'd be guessing. Kind of the second corner of the zigzags. So yeah, and that's maybe half the courses are like that now. So you're looking at 600 to 800, and then these good days when the snow drops really low. And to be honest, those days, like the really amazing days when the snow's right down to the valley floor, and it's actually a bit of a nightmare because you're trying to run courses and like you're worried about people in summer tires and roads being open, and yeah, I kind of like it when it's just that 650-meter height, and yeah, get the good access, and then you can things are a bit more predictable. But yeah, of course, totally different. If I was out in Mo and I wouldn't bother going, I'd be going somewhere else. I wouldn't be going to Cairngorm because there'd be so many other options. I'd be getting away from the infrastructure and seeking out something a bit further afield. And on those days, when we have got the low snow, that's when we go down to Glenfeshie or we go to Dromochter or, it could be Craigmeggy or something like that, get away from the usual areas. But there are a lot of good options from the Cairngorm car park. And then, of course, on the other side of the Larry Grew, you've got Blair, Cairntall, the Angel's Peak, and that's where Simon was talking about the escalator. The escalator is going must be about 700 meters bottom of that. I'd have to check on a map. I can't remember offhand where Loch Hynek is. But potentially, those burn lines that can get really wind loaded and hold snow for quite a long time, they often have snow lower down. So, you are kind of looking for those little hollows that are going to get the snow when the big storms come and then hang on to them for a long time. And then you've got lower access. Was that actually a question? Oh yeah, it was, wasn't it? And usually at what height does the snow begin? Yeah, so it depends on the shape of the terrain that you're skiing. And Brairie is a classic example of that. A really nice way of approaching the upper mountain. And the other thing to think about here is that it's quite often it looks pretty grim from when you arrive at car park level. Sure, a lot of you have experienced this, but once you get up on the plateau, it's fantastic. A good cover all over, and just a completely different world once you get up there. And that's, for me, is one of the most enjoyable parts of my job in Scotland, is that the surprise when you go over onto the east side of Cairngorm or over the south side of Cairngorm and it's just all white, because it's been loaded by the southwesterly wind, or, well, sorry, the east side. Or you go over the south side and you just see that expanse of snow out to Ben Macdui. And suddenly it's like, oh, hang on a minute, there's a ton of snow up here. And that's always a really nice moment. Yeah. I'm just going to scroll down in case there were any other questions. Don't know if there are actually. Anything on the mental side of ski touring, not giving up, if I'm tired, etc. Yeah, I mean, it just depends on every individual, doesn't it? I think there's no fix for something like that. And at the end of the day, if you're getting to a stage where you're so physically tired you don't want to go on, then you don't go on. I guess it's just the way I grew up. I was a ski racer in Scotland, and we went out in all sorts and got pushed pretty hard by coaches, and I guess kind of pushed myself a lot. And I'm terrible for like, it's one of these heuristic traps, isn't it? I'm terrible for setting a challenge and just doing it and getting to the end of it. And I think it's just a sort of stubbornness that I have. So if I want to do the 4,000ers on my own, the Cairngorm 4,000ers, the loop around the Larry Crew, I tend to just do it. And then I get back at the end of it, I was like, why did I do that? That was grim. On the bad weather days. But yeah, I think it's just stubbornness. And don't like to admit that I've not managed to do something I was going to do. But that's definitely not a good approach. Not like that when I'm taking groups out. I mean, more on my own. But yeah, if I'm out with people and they're at their limit, then no, we stop. We definitely don't push on. But I think in Scotland, what the environment allows people to do is to push themselves a little bit. I mean, some days are enjoyable, but you're verging on type 2 fun. But at the end of the day, the feedback's always great, and I think that our lives are comfortable, and sometimes we do need to put ourselves in these uncomfortable situations, and I don't think that's a bad thing, as long as it's not going over that line. So when you're an outdoor instructor, I think that's a lot of your job is like that, is like showing people what they can do, but making sure you don't cross that line, because that's when things become dangerous. So that's to do with getting to know people. So I guess if you're out with somebody who's, there's a lot of kind of mental blockages and everything. It's about that relationship you build up with that person and being able to suss out, is this something you think they can carry on a little bit further with, or is that sort of time up? And if you meet somebody as an instructor, if you meet somebody in the car park for the first time that morning, all you've got is the information on your sheet, and we gather as much information as we can, but you've only got the conversations you have with them and the information on your sheet. So it's a people job, isn't it? You're trying to suss that out as you go. So yeah, I can't answer that one unless I really got to know you. I'm going to scroll down again. Falkirk Community Trust, yeah, they're good value courses. How would you rate the Windy Call or Corrie Raybert's lines to get a taste of Scottish backcountry skiing? So Windy Call, I'm guessing down into Windy Call is a descent down into Corrie an Treacha, okay, or Schnechta, as people call it. And Corrie Raybert, the upper part of Corrie Raybert is lovely and flat, and then it sort of disappears down to Loch Anne. And Simon had a nice picture of that with the loch below. So it depends on your skiing. Corrie Raybert itself at the top would be like a green run all the way down, a nice cruise. If in sticky snow, it's awful, but in good snow, it's just superb. And then the descent down to Loch Anne is, I mean, it's exceptional if it's the snow is safe and you can do that sort of descent. It's what gradient would that be? It's got to be sort of 35 on the shoulder, higher if you come in direct. Corrie Raybert, I mean, that's quite a specific question, but Corrie Raybert has got a big bulge at the top of it, kind of, if you came underneath that and it was unstable, it would take you down into a river. So it's actually one of these ones that's just super accessible, gets a lot of traffic, but is actually quite a complicated descent. There's a way of avoiding the dangerous part by coming well above it and coming down a shoulder, but there is quite a steep waterfall all the way down it. So yeah, definitely one you want to check out. And Windy Call usually gets some really nice snow, takes you down the side of all the steep gullies and into the corrie, and yeah, usually a pretty good ski. But again, in bad seasons, pretty bouldery, and you can make a right mess of your skis if you get that one wrong. Many Scottish. All right, there's something about Inverness Backcountry Snow Sport Club. Yeah, very active club, lots of good trips. I mean, yourselves, the Eagles in Inverness Backcountry. Yeah, I always love looking at the pictures that come up from those trips. Definitely good to see people still having proper adventures in Scotland. Do you ever ski alone with just check-in times and emergency contact? If so, yeah, I ski alone a lot. I don't know. Like, I know some people don't agree with that, some people do, but I mean, it depends on where you are, right? It depends on the sort of terrain that you're traveling in. I used to carry a Garmin PLB. I've switched to an iPhone 14 because it's got the SOS emergency feature, by satellite, and it's got the crash detect and all the rest of it. How well that works, I don't know. I've not had to use it, but I do have that, and I do, and I can constantly I share my location via satellite regularly through the day, and my business partner Gav is tracking me, and then he knows what I'm doing. And I would let people in Aviemore know when I'm due back. How does it affect my planning? It's like risk, isn't it? It's about risk, and I mean, do you tone it down or do you not? I mean, should it be any different, really, if you're with somebody or without somebody? I've skied steep lines on my own. I don't know. I mean, I'm probably going to say something a bit controversial in that I would argue sometimes it's more dangerous to ski with somebody. Okay, I'm not talking about the practical sides of what happens when something goes wrong. I'm more talking about the decision making, And if you're leading a group and you're clearly the person leading, and that has been decided very openly, and as an instructor, you're leading the group, then that's safe, in that everyone knows who's making decisions and you're sharing the information of why you're making decisions. If you're out there as equals, it's difficult sometimes, and we see it all the time as outdoor instructors, when you have two similarly qualified, similarly experienced instructors who are sort of co-leading the group. It's actually a lot safer sometimes to say, right, you're the person leading, and then if we want to sort of consult or discuss things, we can have that discussion, but you're the person that makes the call. So when I'm out on my own, I am making the call every single time for myself, not based on anybody else. But I'm not going onto any steep terrain in that situation. For me, it's more about I can travel at my own speed. I'm not pushing somebody too hard, nor am I trying to keep up with somebody who's a lot fitter than me. So I just really like it. I kind of like to be on my own, but then I'm a teacher, so so you just want to have some quiet time, right? After you've been with kids. How's it fit? Yeah, I don't know if I answered that question or not. Yeah, I just I wouldn't be putting myself in any risky situations. But having said that, I don't really feel I do that with other people now. Anyway, if that makes any sense. Best and worst Type 3 fun days. Do they have Type 3 fun nowadays? That must be an Alpine thing. We only do Type 2 in Scotland. I don't know what that means. I think Type 3, I kind of like the physical side of it now. I would love to be someone. I'd love to be someone like Finlay Wild. It must be amazing. Imagine being able to travel as fast as somebody like Finlay Wild and just like run around 18 Monroes in a day on your skis. It just must make you feel like a superhero. Um, so yeah, those type 3 days are kind of interest me more now. I used to kind of like the steeper stuff, and I've questioned why. Like, I don't know. Like, did I really like it? Like I did some big North Faces in the Alps, and like trying to jump turn my way down this stuff, and like, I was so tense I could hardly even ski properly. I don't think that was fun, really. I just did it because like I kind of wanted to prove to myself I could do it. It's like calibrating myself against these guys in Chamonix. Like, am I good enough? Who cares? Who cares? Whereas the long
Blair,
distance stuff, I think is great.
Blair, can I ask you about your challenge that you did, your 10 in a weekend?
Oh
What was
yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
inspiration for the 10?
That was Gav's idea, I'm pretty sure. My business partner. Why? I can't remember. Oh, I think he just wanted to ski the 10 highest mountains, but we'd done that. Like we've done that separately loads of times. And I was like, well, just have to do it in a weekend. I think like for me, what I want to do, if I'm going to do a challenge, I want it to be something that other people can copy, I'm not that interested in like really extreme stuff. I want somebody to say, oh, that's a good idea. I could do that. And 10 in a weekend, you totally could. If you got a camper van, it's like the perfect little trip, isn't it? You stop at Ben Lawers on the way up, and then you can. Well, we went to the CIC hut on skied Ben Nevis the next day, but if you're fit, you could do it. You could do this, and then the Cairngorm 4000ers on the last day. So the one I'd love to do would be we're going to call it the Oat Route instead of the Oat Route. The Oat Route. So the Oat Route has been done a couple of times before in skis. That would be a west to east crossing. And it was done by, talking about Finlay again, but Finlay and his dad, Roger Wild, the mountain guide, they did it from Fort William, and I think they went all the way to the east coast, like to the sea. It was absolutely ridiculous, but they're on cross-country skis. So I want to turn it into something like Fort William to Braemar and just try and stay in high ground as much as I can all the way across. So if we had snow down to 400 meters, 500 meters, I think it'd be doable. But yeah, it could be a bit of a slog actually. It'd be nice to document it as well. Um, and then yeah, so that would definitely be type 3 fun. Um, how do we keep from clashing with Cairngorm pistes? How do you keep from clashing with Cairngorm pistes? Maybe it's Cairngorm Mountain. We've got a pretty good relationship with Cairngorm Mountain. I mean, I grew up with a lot of the guys that work there. Um, I mean, I hate the negativity that you get for ski resorts, even Cairngorm, Okay, there's bad decisions made and like, but that's got nothing to do with the people who actually work there on the hill. So I just try and be as respectful as possible. We check in with the guys in the morning and tell them where we're going, and ask where the machinery is, etc. There's one like pinch spot in Cairngorm, which is like it's a pretty difficult one in that you've got that traverse that goes from the Cass up to the Ptarmigan. There's that road, called I think it is called the Traverse, isn't it? Yeah. And there isn't really space there, and that's like sometimes the only sort of good snowy bit to get up to the Ptarmigan. So I would like, if I have to do it, then I'll try and get people up on the snow above the traverse. It's a bit of an awkward place to climb up, but I will try and avoid that as much as possible and maybe go up the Windy Ridge path, sorry. Um, and then, or yeah, just find a way of keeping away from that. But I mean, the thing is nowadays, like, it's not that common. The lifts are running and the ski runs are open, and actually, it's not such a big deal. We can usually use a lot of the access, and not get in the way of any machinery. But yeah, just check in the morning, or even if you see a ski patrol guy on the hill, just talk to them. It's just keeps the relationship good as well. The last season was great because Cairngorm was selling ski touring passes and allowing you to use it even when it was just the M1 and the Ptarmigan. So in the past, you had to get for the ski touring pass, you had to have a lift starting at car park level, which wasn't very useful because that hardly ever happened. So they changed it last year. So then you just had to walk up to the M1 and then get on the M1. And yeah, what is it, 15 quid or something? Like, it's an absolute bargain, for, just not having to do that big climb up and getting you away from everything really quickly. So you can do that and then do the Ptarmigan. And then from the Ptarmigan, you potentially don't even need skins. You can just like traverse around the east side of Cairngorm and go wherever you need to go. So yeah, that's a good shout. Train should be working this winter, but £12 for a ski touring pass. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, the train should be working this winter. Not much use for ski tourers unless you want to buy a full ticket, because they're not going to let you on the train, as a ski tourer. Sorry, you're not going to get a ski touring pass for the train. I guess the train working might actually not be such a good thing for a ski tour, in that it might mean that the M1 doesn't run as much. So then there might be less ski touring passes, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. I suspect they just, if the snow's good enough, they will try and run the M1, so it should be fine. Any other
Blair, I think just to start to wrap it up,
yeah.
Can you just, I think one of the big questions is your new book different from the first edition? So if people own the first edition, should they be buying the second edition?
Well,
how is it different?
It's just become something it's become almost like a celebration of Scottish skiing, I would say, as well as a guidebook. And it's very thorough. I mean, I can't think of, I'd be very surprised if there's lines that people have skied that are not in the book. But the last one was 100 lines. This is, the last one was what, 100 and, I can't remember now. I can't remember how many pages it was. It certainly wasn't over 200. I mean, this thing could be close to 500 pages by the time we're finished. It's absolutely huge. I don't know how we're going to, actually make any money on it, because the print costs will be horrendous. But I'll keep trying to preview bits of it on the on our Facebook page, and have a check out on some of the pages, see what you think. But it's the last one I think is a very useful. You don't need to take a guidebook in your rucksack, whoever that is. I've never brought a guidebook, and maybe the Coolin Ridge was the only time I ever have had a guidebook with me. But I think take a picture. All right, fair enough. So yeah, I think that's the best way. Rather than me scrolling.
That does make it sound like we're not going to have it for Christmas, though. It does kind of sound like you haven't finished writing it yet.
Well, I think Jamie Johnson's on this chat, and he's the person that's doing the last part of it. All the content is there. So Katie Henderson, who is from Aboyne, and she's done a lot of work on the Eastern and Cairngorm Glen Shee. All her content's there. Scott Muir's content from Steep Scotland has been sort of reworked, and it's all there. My stuff from Northern Cairngorms and Dromochter and Bengley. So everything is there. It's just what we need to do now is we're spending a lot of time on getting the maps really well done, and just getting a far more professional layout than my previous one, which I've obviously made myself. So it's gonna, I think it's gonna be a different sort of quality to the previous book. The previous book was very functional. This one is gonna be a work of art. It's well worth it.
Sounds great. I think we're all really looking forward to it.
No pressure, right. Jamie. It's going to be a work of art if you're listening.
Final call for any questions before we wrap it up.
I've answered everything about Scottish skiing. Excellent.
You did indeed. Between the two of you, you've done an excellent job. I really appreciate having both of you come, Simon and Blair. Thank you for taking the time. We appreciate all the information, Simon, that you put together for us. That was great. Blair, it's been great to have your expertise and your insight, and we're all really excited to see the work of art book.